We're back at the table with this week's Line Opinion panelists. The Albuquerque Journal reported this week on a new study that shows New Mexico is first in the nation on dependence on the federal government in their spending. This is not a surprise for many. And Julianne, is this a reminder about our state's vulnerability, or where do we take this kind of information? Is it just a meh, we already knew this, or is it a huge red flag that we need to pay attention to?
Yeah, I think one of the Journal writers, Richard Metcalf, opened his recent piece on this in a very interesting way, and didn't make this up either. But when the federal government sneezes, New Mexico catches cold.
Right.
So yes, in a way, this is no surprise. When you live in the north, when you're in Santa Fe and Espanola, more people who work at the lab than don't. Here we've got Sandia and Albuquerque. There are also the 4 military bases, and then there's 25% of the public land that's in federal hands. And this is not new information, but this reliance on the federal government, coupled with the political winds that say reliance on the federal government maybe isn't a great strategy. I think it does spell a little trouble for our state. Certainly with the unemployment rate and with the private sector struggling, that all.
That's right. Tom, I got to ask you about this. There are facts of the matter and there's the perception of the matter. And is it necessarily that bad a thing to have this much reliance on the perception part when folks look at us? How should we be considered by other people?
Wow, that's a good question. I'm not sure how to answer that.
It's a toughie.
Because you have other people's outside perception.
Is it necessarily a downside or right out of the gate?
No, I think from outside, a business looking in, you're looking for consistency, for strength, for financial economic base, and so the government jobs definitely provide that, whether it's through the military bases, the national labs, or even the prevalence of state government.
Right.
But when you get beyond that, though, you have to look at the training of the workforce.
Right.
As far as is the workforce trainable? And I think a lot of our trainable workforce has already left. So it's like, okay, what's the New Mexico economy going to do to try and attract those back in? And I think that the answer perhaps could be found in the permanent fund, as we were talking about before.
Right.
What that looks like, I don't know.
Right.
But I think there has to be a way where we have to declare that it's not just a rainy day. We are just in a freaking drought.
Sure. That's
in more ways than one.
That's right.
And so we need to be able to do something to really shake it loose. And I think the permanent fund could help to do that. The thing that really surprised me in doing some reading in advance for this session was the state of denial, and I mean this with all due respect for Steve Varick of the New Mexico Partnership, when he says, quote, clearly now we need to build up and grow the private sector side of things. It's like, as Julianne mentioned, this is nothing new. This is not breaking news, and we're just now admitting that we have a problem. This reliance on government. Yeah, it is. I guess it is. Yeah. So,
Denial.
So New Mexico is now on a 12-step program, which is really nice.
Not bad at all. What's interesting about, funny you mentioned that. When you think about people in the federal government, we're now just north of 30% of our workforce here in the metro is involved somehow in federal work. And when you look around at other places that are really rocking and rolling, really killing it on the economy, they're not even close to anything like that. A lot of those places are in the single digits. So I ask again, is there some kind of problem here with having that kind of percentages? Or when people look at us, is it...
And it's very complicated because the federal jobs also create the other jobs, all of the jobs that support them.
Right.
I had been thinking about it. Our agency is a $1.7 million agency, and $400,000 is now through federal grants.
Interesting.
And I started thinking,
do you feel vulnerable because of that as an organization?
Well, I started thinking, the government shuts down. What does that do to our cash flow? I think the political winds change and the regulations change. What does that do to the agency? So I feel like think about it, even in the nonprofit world, where a significant, and I think it's 5% of New Mexicans work in the nonprofit world.
That's about right, as I hear it.
So that's if the nonprofit world is also dependent on federal grants and federal contracts, that's pretty significant.
That's an interesting layer you add there. A lot of folks don't talk about that nonprofit side of it. Because I can think of a bunch of nonprofits. You're right, they get a significant amount of their money outside of the state.
Ours has been increasing over time, and it's now up to, of a $1.7 million budget, which isn't a huge budget, but $400,000 is a big chunk of that budget.
Yeah, it's interesting. Stephen, your thought on this? Is it necessarily a downside? Or if it is, what do we do? How does one turn around? Because you can't just throw everybody out of federal jobs and say, oh no, go fend for yourselves.
Yeah, and actually I think this is a mistake that the governor has made, because she talks about diversifying the economy. As Tom says, everybody agrees with that.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean you don't try to get all the federal money you can get.
Right.
And as I said earlier, she closed down those offices. Richardson was getting billions of dollars in infrastructure.
That's right.
The rail runner, the spaceport, roads, billions.
You have to
of
be
dollars.
near the money,
Right,
literally,
Right.
physically.
So
yeah.
I think the way to do it is to try to leverage. This is what Mayor Barrett, another Republican, but not a Tea Partier, right?
Yeah.
He's trying to, if you look at Innovate Albuquerque, he's trying to take the R&D that exists at UNM, for example, that exists at the labs, and leverage that. To the private sector. But what you don't do is reject. I mean, the governor was elected to set the priorities in the state, the budget, et cetera. We elect federal representatives to set the priorities in the federal government. And if they decide that federal programs might benefit New Mexico, we should go after that federal money, and then we should do whatever we can to leverage that. And also, I would say small little tax cuts aren't the answer.
Right.
I mean, what are we doing to try to keep Intel here?
Well, there's a story right there. Yeah.
That's a huge story, and there's been all kinds. That's not just little tax cuts. We need to make sure businesses like that stay in New Mexico. That's how to increase the private sector.
Sure. Julianne, there's so many parts of our state where the only thing really going on is a federal or state thing. That's like the employer in that area. And, there's a lot of, free marketeers I've talked to around here that would love to see all that just go away and have people just fend for themselves. It's an amazing thing.
I mean, you think about, too, we were talking about the middle class earlier in the show. You take a middle class paycheck and you think about the part of that paycheck that goes to the federal government. Why shouldn't we reap the benefits of all of the money that we give the feds? I agree with this statement about the federal government setting the priorities and sending the money back to the states. We had this, another example of that is the federal money available from the Centers for Medicaid that the current governor's administration said, well, we don't really want to implement it the way you want us to. We don't really need the money. And they said, well, then we won't really give it to you. So where we're going to be in terms of new Medicaid enrollees and people signing up for the health insurance plans that are available with subsidies from the federal government, I think you're going to see a slowdown of that because we're not getting the funding for awareness.
Interesting. Wow. Antoinette, oil and gas revenue's down a little bit, which means that has ramifications for all of us here in the state. And it's kind of a bit of a side angle here on this discussion, but the economy is hurting a little bit more because of it. Does that make us more anxious to do something, in fact, when our big number one killer, input of money is struggling? Is this the thing to make us really sort of go, okay, now we got to think about diversification in a serious way here?
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And again, but this goes back to the special session. It's just stunning to me. I'm so excited to hear your scoop because this is a no-brainer.
Right.
We have to look at diversification.
Right.
And your point about the government jobs, really, the government jobs have been the foundation of our middle class. If it weren't for federal and state jobs, the
Glad you
gap
threw in
would
state
be
there, too.
huge.
Yeah.
Huge, even bigger than
Well, even coming down on federal stuff for a little bit on the state, you mentioned the state. When Governor Martinez came into office, a lot of state folks were jettisoned out. I've always wondered, what about those are middle class paychecks?
Exactly.
Where do those people go? These are not people inclined, in very general terms, to go out and replace it with a private effort, opening a store or something.
I knew a few that have left the state.
That's right.
Just
So have I.
personally.
Yeah.
Or they're struggling in some of these entrepreneurial kind of patched together and existence sort of ways to make a living, and those folks get hit very hard by the current tax structure.
Yeah, interesting. Last question for you two on this one. Again, in a perfect world, there'd be more balance. We don't have it. That's okay. How do we get there? Is it a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan? Do we have to have big agreement? Does it take a Bill Richardson, not to use him, but someone who is a change maker to come in and say, look, this is just not going to last anymore?
Yeah, I think a change maker is definitely needed. I think you need a short-term plan, and the city of Albuquerque, I think, has done a really good job with that through ABQID, through a lot of the tech entrepreneurism. And see, what that does is that leverages the existing infrastructure with Sandia National Labs and that technology outsourcing to say, how can we leverage that? And see, that's a smart move. We need to be able to take the federal funding, the state funding, and we need to be able to take the oil and gas, which was right now not doing as well as it has been, and just say, okay, that's our base. How are we going to leverage that base to create jobs and opportunity? As Win Quigley said in one of his articles, not a chance to earn an income, but actually to build wealth. Because I think if we provide New Mexico residents on all levels a chance to build wealth, that's when I think we'll start to see the short-term results really start to come in.
That's right. Thank you for mentioning Winthrop Quigley from the Journal. It's a piece we all read about that he wrote about 3 or 4 weeks ago on what it takes to be rich here, in quotes. So a very interesting piece. Up next, what was learned from a survey of Jewish people here in New Mexico.